to be what you have designed for us to be. Lord God, our only hope in life is to be your example in the kingdom and your example in the world. And if we can do that today, God, then we are closer to our victory than we've ever been before. Lord God, our hearts and minds are nothing more than a reflection of who you are. And we look back into the very days in which we could not see you in order for us to be reminded of the days that we could. So God, we give you glory. We lift you up. We magnify you. We thank you, God, for who you are. In this glorified name, in Jesus' name we pray. Let us all say amen. Amen. Come on, let's give God some praise. You may be seated in the kingdom. Again, this is the first week of September. We understand this Labor Day weekend. People are on vacation. People are preparing to return back to school. Getting all prepared for that. So we know when it gets a little thin in the kingdom, the reasoning behind it, but we never dispel, we never get frustrated over those things, because we know that at the end of the day, it's just a reflection of who life may be. I don't want to be long today. I want to share with you something that's really laid upon my heart. Again, we thank you for all those who have spent their time with us today, those who are pouring in and participating. We thank those who are watching and peeking in. I have some favorites, some I consider great friends of mine. They like to peek in early on and stick around for a while. So we thank God for them. We thank God for all of you who are here today. I'm only going to come to you from one verse today, something that was laid on me in the last few weeks. We've been dealing about integrity. We've been dealing about walking in the life of Christ. We've been dealing about being an example in the kingdom. And I believe that this verse, this passage, this message today is a continuation of what we've talked about. It should be a reminder of some things that we've already addressed, some things we share. So if you have your scriptures, look in Proverbs chapter 16. I know that's an unfamiliar chapter, a book. You saying, wait a minute, he went to Proverbs. Yes, I went to Proverbs today. This is rare for me, but yes, I'm in Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 16, we're going to read verse 7. That's all I want to deal with today. One verse today. Look at somebody and tell them one verse. And I'm dealing with one verse today. Proverbs chapter 16, they're going to deal with verse 7. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 7. And as you're looking that up, which it shouldn't be long, table of contents is after Psalms. Some books is probably around page 347, 420. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 7 reads as such. When a man's ways pleases the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Let me say it again. When a man's ways pleases the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Now, there's one translation. I like the way it says it. The translation says that when a man's ways pleases the Lord's, even his haters are at peace with him. I like that. It says when a man's ways pleases the Lord, even his haters are at peace with him. Now, why am I saying that today? I'm reading this today because for those who like titles and subjects, my title today is Let Your Works Speak. Let me say it again. The title is Let Your Works Speak. So why are we talking about this today? We're talking about this today because we're in one of the most dynamic but yet toxic environments in history. We're in a place where people just won't cut you a break. Can I be real today? They won't cut you a break. No matter how much you may change, no matter how many efforts you make towards doing things good, they are so hell-bent on holding on to what you were or their opinion of you that it will, no matter what you do good, they will always remember what you've done bad. And the thing is, even if you've done nothing to them, just the fact that the world don't like you, they're going to carry on to that bandwagon and stay bitter instead of watching you become better. Anybody been in that situation? Anybody been frustrated at the fact that nobody wants to see the change in me because they keep holding back to what I used to be? Well, let me help you out. I want to be, can I reveal some things? Here's the reason why that happens. It's because even though you believe there's change in you, if your works don't line up with what you believe you have done, you haven't changed. Uh-oh, hello. See, here's the thing. You can always give an identification to people that I'm different, but in reality is if you are still walking the same way, you're not different, you're not better, you're still bitter. Mm-hmm. Hello. It's real simple to change an I from E and an E from I. Bitter means it's about me. Better means it's about everyone else. So if you take I out of it, you can become better for who you are instead of holding fast to what you've been. And here's reasons why this doesn't happen. You can tell people you're different. You want people to see you different. You want people to give you a break, but you give no one else a break. You remember the parable about the judge giving a reprieve to the young man for his debts, and he goes outside on the court steps and puts to jail someone who owed him money. Mm-hmm. This is how we live. The parable is saying this because he's saying that we have to live a different way and we have to function in a different manner. You can't sit there and expect people to overlook what you've done when you won't overlook what other people have done. You can't expect people to forgive you for what you've done when you won't forgive others for what they've done. And the reason I'm saying is because the very same people you want to forgive you are the very same people that you are being critical of other people too. Uh-oh. I'm getting all toes this morning. So again, when this verse came up, it was a clear indication of something that we have to live by. In this proverb, and we know the man of God, Solomon, he had asked God for wisdom. So when you read this, you understand this is not just man's wisdom. This is the wisdom of God presented to us in such a manner that we should live by. And I guarantee you, Shanetta, this is one of those verses people overlook, because it's too easy. It says, when a man's ways pleases the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Now, when we think about this, I need to break this down into two portions, because there's a cause and then there's an effect. There's a cause and then there's an effect. So when we think about it, in truth be told, what we're really saying in this verse, that it not only speaks of cause and effect, but it speaks of both action and response. It speaks of how we should live, and then it speaks of the expected response of how we live. Now, I'm not going to be here talking about people's sin. I'm not talking about people's fun. I'm talking about you internally. And today, I want you to get yourself in a position where you're looking at yourself in the mirror and doing a self-evaluation based on the tips that God is giving to you today. So when you think about it, you technically are not here. You're actually looking at yourself in the mirror and you're asking yourself a preponderance of questions in order to make sure that you yourself are living a right life that is worthy of what God called you to, or as it says, living a life that pleases the Lord. So the thing about it is we have to understand, if we are living a life pleasing of the Lord, then our enemies are at peace with it. Something doesn't make sense. How can we ever function in that manner? And like I said, there's a reasoning for it, because you first have to have a cause. The first portion of this verse is the cause, which is now affected the second portion. So what happens is, whatever you do in the first is the reason why the second happens. So if your enemies are not at peace with who you are, it's not them, it's you. Oh, come on, I'm trying to help somebody. If your enemies are still coming at you, it's not them, it's you. Hello. Wait, you mean I'm giving them no reason to hate on me? Are you sure? I'm giving them no reason to treat me the way they are. Are you sure? Here's the kicker. Watch this. You ready for this? But I forgave them. So? You forgave them for treating you the way they have, but have you changed so that they don't have to treat you that way anymore? See, it's hard. It's hot. I know people are tired. They're like, we didn't come here for this. This is Labor Day. I'm going to relax and enjoy myself. But God is saying, before you get into the last portion of this year, you need to reflect on something, and that is you. Because what happens in the next few months is a basic reflection of who you are, about where you're going in the direction. So again, this is not a condemnation. This is not a criticism. This is a clear evaluation of who we are. Because here's the thing. No one stays the same way all the time. And if they do, it's because they just believe, that's it. I don't have a reason to change. But here's the thing. Watch this. You ready? Hold on. Be careful of anybody who has lived their entire life the same way. Because they have not grown, they have not shrunk, they have not left, or they have not right. They have been the same place the entire life. Even a stone over time loses its shape due to the water that is brushed against it. So if you find somebody that says, this is me, that's it, accept me for who I am their entire life, then I would tell you right now, flee. Because if they stay that way, they are officially the definition and poster child for bitter. They are going to, they stay that way, and they're going to be toxic in your relationships. They're going to be toxic in your life because they refuse to change. It is like a donkey that will sit, a donkey sits down, they ain't moving until they're ready. But can you imagine a donkey that sits there and pulls up a television and gets them some hot pockets? They ain't going nowhere. So what are you going to do? Waste the rest of your time trying to get them to move when they're not moving? We spend too much time carrying people around with us that are just lame on their own. God didn't call them handicapped. They cut their own legs off because they don't want to grow. They don't want to move. They want to stay right there. But here's the thing. They are so oblivious to the fact that they have stopped moving, they will actually tell you that they'll be critical of someone else's lack of movement, and they don't even realize they haven't moved themselves. That's like somebody being broke down on the side of the road, and they're complaining about how fast everyone else is driving. Doesn't make sense, does it? How are you critical of someone else? At least they're moving. I don't know how I got here. This is not what I wrote. I don't know what y'all been praying about, but trying to change something here. Let me get back. So here's the thing. In this passage, in this verse, God is saying something. First, He's saying that we must live a life that is pleasing to God. This is the critical mission of the people of God. We are required to live a holy, righteous life that is pleasing to God. We're too busy trying to please people. Let's be real. How many of you have been frustrated because you're trying to do God's will, but then you end up compromising to please someone else, and then they're not pleased? He said, they say, well, what do I try for? Right, why'd you try? Why did you try to please a person, which would end up causing you not to please God? Because once we start trying to please man, we take away from the will of God that's in our lives. Now, don't get it twisted. Pleasing God doesn't mean you beat down, tear down, berate, criticize, and beat up on the world. Absolutely not. But if you understand what it means to live a life pleasing to God, you'll realize that half the crap that you're doing is not the will of God in the first place. It is you. Where your emotions from whatever happened to you over time is still in the forefront that you haven't dealt with, but you told people you dealt with. When you sit there and think about what happened, you project all of this on everyone else, but you say, I'm walking the will of God. But yet nothing is lining up in your life along the line of what God has said. So God is not out of it. God hasn't missed. You have not adjusted your life to suit what God has called you to. I'm sorry, you are not living the life that God says that is the man's ways that are pleasing to God. There is a way that we must live that is pleasing to God first and foremost. And even though some people may be offended, they're not offended long. God does not allow us or force us to live a life that is offensive to anything but sin. Okay, let me say it again. God will not allow us to live a life that is nothing but offensive to anything but sin. The only thing that we should offend is sin. So when someone gets offended by how we're living, they're not offended by us. They're offended by the fact that the sin in them is offended that we are walking in a holistic life. But when people are offended because we're more hypocritical than we are righteous, then we're not living the will of God. We're just giving them reasoning to be happy. So they're not offended that we're being hypocritical. They're happy at the fact that we are. And in truth be told, they're sitting there saying, how dare you be high and mighty about me? Look at your life. You trying to tell me how to live? Look at you. You ever heard that? Look at you. But when you're walking a life pleasing to God, they can't say that. Oh, man. Is this making sense to you? Are you all right? Listen, watch this, watch this. What? Because see, only thing this verse is saying in the first half is this. When a man's ways are pleasing to God, we have to focus on that. That is self-evaluation. That is you taking stock in who you are. That is you looking in the mirror and saying, am I doing everything that God instructed me to do? Am I doing everything God established me to do? Am I living the life God created me to live? Or am I still trying to fit in? And see, the thing is, there's a lot that I want to address, but in limited time. Such as people trying to, say, well, I don't fit in the world. That's not true. You live in the world. God just doesn't want you to be subjected or give in to the sins of the world. But you still live in the world. How do you not live in a world? How does that function? That's not true. You are a spiritual being in a fleshly body that you're battling with your flesh every day in the world. But the life pleasing to God is saying, how are you able to manage living your life here in the world without being a worldly person? That's what they're saying. They're saying, I want you to live amongst the people, but I need you to be a people of God, amongst people who are not of God and people who are. Because you have to not only be an example to those who don't know God, you have to be an example of those who do. So when he says live a life pleasing to God, you have to first realize that everything you're doing should be pleasing to God first, foremost, and last. So when you function in that life, you are an example to everyone of who God is to you. If you misunderstand God, you will present a misunderstood example. Take that one to Twitter. If you have a misunderstanding of God, you will present a misunderstood example. And then you wander around, people don't understand me. It's not they don't understand you. You don't understand God. And because you don't understand God, you're projecting to them something that God never said for you to be. And then you're wondering why you're getting attacked and being judged and being criticized and being left alone and finding yourself stuck in a hole or a cave by yourself. You're isolated and you can't figure out why, because you know God said that he wouldn't isolate you, but you're isolated. So if God said that you shouldn't be isolated, then it's not God preventing you. Something you're doing is preventing you. Can I be deep? Can I go deeper? Lazarus would never have lived if he didn't willingly get up when Christ called him. So you got to realize faith without works is dead. Means there has to be an action placed on what you're doing. There has to be an action placed on what you're doing. And that means that you have to push forward beyond your own understanding, fears, and comprehension in order to reach that place that God has established for you. But if you are still holding fast to who you are and say, God made me this way and ain't no reason for me to change, you're absolutely right. If God made you this way, there's no reason for you to change, no problem. But you are going to deal with these battles by yourself. As the scripture says, the weapons of warfare are not carnal. But it also says that the weapons that are formed against you shall not prosper. Why? Because he didn't form them. These are weapons that are created because you refuse to realize you're not living the life pleasing to God. What I find amazing, what's this? Y'all all right? This is weird. Y'all got me switching around. What I find amazing about this proverb is this. The proverb is telling us that we shouldn't be so focused on the opinion of others if we are living a life that is pleasing unto God. I have, in the past week or so, read so many comments and opinions, storylines, pleas for help from people who are saying that they're living for God. But everything they put out there is not a reflection of God. And they're frustrated because nobody is responding in kind. But the thing is, if you want something from God, you have to have a life that people are willing to receive from God. And all of it happens in a way that we have to be set up in a line to do it. Here's the hardest thing, Kevin. The hardest thing to ever do is to realize that you're a mess in God. And to realize that when you look at it and say, man, a lot of the things that I have done in my life not contributed to the plans that God has for me, it's because I refuse to submit to the plans God has for me. I wanted my plans to take me to higher places. I wanted God's plans to take me to limelights and to spotlights. I wanted God's plans to have me on television and TBN, Word Network, and Impact. I wanted God's plans to have me driving a Bentley and living in a 6-bedroom house paid for. I wanted God's plans to have me doing this, that, and the other. But God's plans don't have me doing that, and I don't understand why. Because God's plans was to prosper you, to keep you safe, to give you a hope and a future. Not what you saw on television or what you perceived it to be. God's plans was established to build you up for your specific assignment, not for someone else's. You're too busy trying to make God's plans fit in someone else's mold. Oh gosh. I want my plans, God, I want my plans to look like Osteen's church, but I want the money and influence of Jake's, but I want to preach like Jackie McCullough, but I want to walk. No. God didn't give you that kind of assignment. God may have given you an assignment to preach to 5 on a storefront. God may give you an assignment to be a street ministry. God gave you an assignment to do something. God may give you an assignment to be the most gifted trash man known to mankind. But you won't accept that because your pride won't put you in that position. Now, God, that ain't what it is. You called me. Yeah, but you don't know what he called you to. Because you're too busy trying to live someone else's life. And you create enemies because they're saying, leave my life alone and you live your own. So they're not even fighting against you. They're fighting you to stop you from trying to take over what they've done. This amazing thing. Do you know why we need co-signers? We need co-signers because what we're doing doesn't have enough credit worthiness in order for us to do what we need to do. So we need someone else who has stronger credit in order to help us to get what we need. But watch this. As soon as you get that signature, whatever you purchase based on that co-signer, you say it's mine. Oh, y'all missed that. Y'all missed that. You got someone else's signature on it, but you driving around like it's yours. But if it wasn't for the help of someone else, it would never be yours. And here's the problem. Once they sign, they're locked in. They can't take it off unless you allow it. Too many people are living off of someone else's glory or someone else's cosign because they figure they got the power to do it. But what have you done as your life to line up to pleasing to God? You cannot get credit for a life that's pleasing to God that doesn't have your name on it. You can't sit there and say, I'm sitting next to the, we talked about it last week, where the priests were, the Levites were sitting next to the priest and trying to sit there and say, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm a priest and my life is, no, you ran. You changed your mind. You got influenced by the people of God. You've moved the wrong way. So now you're wondering why the enemies are attacking you but not attacking them. Can I get it? Watch this. Here's the reason why the enemies don't attack them and they attack you. They respect their life. They respect their life. Y'all all right? That ain't even on my paper. I don't know what's going on. Watch this. God desires for us to live a life that is so pleasing to him, but also pleasing to him alone. While this may sound selfish, we must realize that if we have submitted ourselves to the hands of God, that we are willfully submitting to do as God sees fit. You understand what I'm saying? This means that we are to walk out the steps that God has for us, live out the plans God has designed for us, nothing else. Well, I still want to do this. I want to do that. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. But does it include God? Because you may not realize that certain things you want to do are leaving God out of it and moving you off of the road that you have to be on. Yes, the road is narrow. Yes, the road is hard. Yes, the road is difficult. Yes, the road requires that you may give up some things. But at the end of the day, it is done for a reason. Because at the very moment you start jumping out there doing something that you shouldn't be doing, you're giving access to an enemy to do something to you that shouldn't have been done in the first place. Again, when we go back to says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, I always say, go back 2 verses because he says, God says, the weapons that have formed, I did not allow. I did not form them. I did not create them. That's why he's saying those weapons shall not prosper because I created, the ones I created are dull. He says, I know the workmen whose hands have been put to that ability in order the blacksmith to make those weapons. So I have already spoken to the blacksmith, and I've already talked to his heart, and his compassion has made the blade dull. So when they attack you, you feel nothing but a bruise. But when you deal with weapons that I did not create, or God was not in, as he says, you're dealing with weapons that could harm you. But the ones that I created can't harm you. And people don't want to deal with that. They're like, but you're still letting the weapons be formed. Yeah, but the ones I'm having formed are not there to hurt you, they're there to help you. But the enemy is trying to destroy you. So all these cuts and bruises that you're getting is not God. It's because you won't walk the life pleasing of God. Oh man, y'all all right? Again, when we realize that, we have to realize that we must walk out the steps that God has for us. Jeremiah says this. He says, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. He says 4 things. He says he knows 5 things. He knows the plans for you. He also says the plans are there to prosper you. The plans are there not to harm you. The plans are there to give you hope. And the plans are there to give you future. Nothing in there says, oh, my plans requires enemies to hate on you. No. He's saying that everything you do, if you live a life pleasing to him, will protect you from everything. But you're not being protected. Some people are blind. They're confused. They don't get it. They're not being protected. They're just avoiding. They're not being protected. They're just ducking. They're not being protected. They have just been desensitized to reality that they're being beat up on, to a point that at some point the abuse becomes numbness. And you know, at that point, you just so busy being stepped on, neglected, overlooked, rejected, and no one including you, that you just accepted that's what God has for you. That's not it. God has been waiting for you to change so that you could be included. God is waiting for you to discover who you are and live the life pleasing unto him so that what you are doing can make room. Oh, the man of God said, my gift will make room. So if your gift is still in the closet, it ain't made room. And the reason it ain't made room is because you haven't applied the gift. And the reason you haven't applied the gift is because you're waiting for your moment. Oh man, who am I dealing with today? You're waiting for your moment. You're not waiting for an opportunity. You're waiting for your moment. The door has been open for opportunities, but you won't go out until the moment arrives. I happened to catch something yesterday, just a portion. They had a master class. Stephen Harvey was on Oprah Winfrey's master class. I only saw like 2-3 minutes of it. But he was talking about when he did his first live performance on HBO, and he was standing behind this curtain, and the curtain was transparent. He could see the crowd, but the crowd couldn't see him. And the purpose of it was, once they announced him, it was supposed to come up, he's supposed to come out, supposed to do his thing. There was a technical malfunctioning going on, and he had to stand in one position, frozen, in one position for 10 minutes. He couldn't respond to the people. He couldn't react. He couldn't lift up. He had to stay in that pose for 10 minutes until that thing came up, and he was hearing people out there yelling, come on, Steve, 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 Steve. And the longer he was under there, the more fear he created. He said it was the most fearful moment of his life. The most frightening moment of his life. And because he had to stand in that position longer than he was supposed to, when he came out to do his performance, he was out of sync. He wasn't ready. The thing about it was this. His moment had arrived, but he didn't stop the moment from showing up. Someone else did, because he was too busy looking for a moment. But the curtain rising said, here's an opportunity. If it was all about making sure he did what he had to do, sometimes you just got to break through that curtain that people can't see. See, that's the thing. What is holding you back from doing the will of God, people can't see it. Only you can see it. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. People can see it, you can't. Because you're still looking at the people, but the people see that hindrance, that barrier between you and them, but you're so oblivious to it that you don't realize it. And instead of you realizing, you don't even recognize that what's holding you back between them and you is you. because you don't realize there's a barrier between you and the plans that God has for you, but everyone else sees it. Oh God, y'all just missed that. You don't see the problem between you and the people, but everyone else sees it. You're still standing in one position, waiting for the people on the other side to give you an opportunity, but you don't realize the reasoning they won't give it to you is because they see something you don't see. Oh my gosh. Are y'all with me today? They see something that you don't recognize. They see something that you don't know is there. They see something that you won't accept. They see something that you won't embrace. But it's only God that can remove it to give you an opportunity to do what you have to do. And when God removes it, you're still walking in fear. Because the whole time you're sitting there looking at these people calling your name, wanting you to do something, waiting for you, but yet you're sitting there saying, nobody's extending a hand to help me. Oh, man. Nobody's reaching out for me, because you don't realize that the reason they're not reaching out to you is because they can't reach you. Oh. The reason they can't reach you is because there's something between them and you, something that you can't see, or what? I'm sorry, I've been saying that for too long. Forgive me, God. Thank you for correcting that. Something that you will not see that everyone else sees. Something that you refuse to see, but that everyone else sees. Something that you refuse to accept about you that everyone else has already accepted about you. And they have said, this is the reason why I can't hook up with you. This is the reason why I can't deal with you. This is the reason why I can't help you. But your enemies is there celebrating. Your enemies is enjoying it, because the enemies is like, yes, please, stay like that. Yes, yes. They're the main ones sitting there saying, you're doing everything. You're fearfully, wonderfully made. They're the ones gassing you because they realize the longer that you stay behind that curtain and the longer there's a malfunction there, you will never move forward. You need to realize the reasoning that you haven't walked in the life pleasing of God is because there's a malfunction between where you are and where you should be. Oh my God. Oh my God. There's a malfunctioning going on between where you are and where you should. That's why you're still in position. You're waiting for your moment, but you felt like your moment passed you by. You're hearing people waiting for you. You're seeing people walking out of the arena because they realize you're not showing up. They don't understand why you won't just break through, but they don't realize there's a barrier break that you haven't broken through. There's a malfunction in your connectioning. There's a malfunctioning in your reaching out. They want you to reach them. You want to reach out, but there's a malfunction. And the malfunction is because you have, why is all this in this one verse? Your malfunction is from the fact that you are not living a life pleasing to God. Watch this, watch this, watch this. Y'all all right? Watch this. The scripture says this. One writer said it this way. He said it this way. Let me go back. Let me go back. See, here's the thing. If God hasn't already written the plans for your life, how much more beneficial would it be for us to follow those plans? If God has already written the plans for our life, how much more beneficial would it be for us to live out those plans? I mean, it just makes sense. If he's already written the plans and we follow those plans, guess what we're doing? We're living a life pleasing to God. Why? Because we're following his plans. No one has ever, you've never grown up, you never got in trouble when you took out the trash when they asked you to. You never got in trouble when you came home before 11 o'clock like they told you to. You never got in trouble when you did what they told you to do. It wasn't until you decided to do your thing that you got in trouble. Even though you like, man, why I gotta be home at 11? Everybody else is home at 12. Because you want to live a life pleasing to God. So when you do things his way, you may not realize between 11 and 12 could be a problem. You stayed out to 11:15 because you was on your way to 7-Eleven to get some gas, and you ended up getting locked up. But had you left and got home at 10:45, you would have witnessed someone else getting locked up. A life pleasing to God protects you. A life pleasing to God covers you. A life pleasing to God prevents you from getting caught up in all those things that he has not already established for you. But because you know better than God, you want to do it differently. So here's the thing, by right, if we followed the plans God has for us to the letter, would we not be living a life pleasing to God? If we are, then although this verse does not tell us what that life should be, we can, through further reading and studying of his scripture, recognize that the life that is pleasing to God is a life that God has already planned for us. How do we know this? Watch this. And in order to do that, all we have to do is follow the blueprint, right? How do we know this? One writer says, as they do when a man walks according to the rule of his word, when he walks as he has Christ for an example, when he walks after the Spirit and not after the flesh, when he walks by faith and does all he does in faith, without which it is impossible to please God, and when all his ways and actions are directed to the glory of God. That is one writer's perception of living a life pleasing to God. Let me say it again. He says it this way. As they do when a man walks according to the rule of his word, when he walks as he has Christ for an example, when he walks after the Spirit and not after the flesh, when he walks by faith and does all he does in faith, without which it is impossible to please God, and when all his ways and actions are directed to the glory of God, now he is living a life pleasing to God. That's a lot. But all that is restricting us from doing those things that would cause us not to live his life. Let me tell you something. I don't care how comfortable or uncomfortable it is. It is frustrating to live a life pleasing to God, but there's benefits to living a life pleasing to God. We may not see it in the process, but you'll see it at the tail end. You may be ostracized in certain ways, or you perceive your people like, man, it don't take all that. I hate when people say it don't take all that. It does. It does. It causes you to say, okay, I can't do those things. I can't be that way. I can't live that way. Why not? I had somebody tell me the other day, I told them, hey, I don't drink. They looked at me like I had a problem. I said, I just don't drink. Well, why not? What's wrong with drinking? I didn't say anything was wrong with it. I just said I don't. That's the problem with it. When you tell people that you don't do something, they automatically think that you're saying that what they're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. But when you're living a life pleasing to God, what you're saying is, I just choose not to engage in what you're engaging in. It's not sinful. I just don't do it. But at the end of the day, and see, a friend of mine, he does this, and I know you on there, I'm going to talk about it, he'll tell me about it later. He'll come to me all day long. He say, man, why y'all eat pork? I don't eat pork. That's your beef. Y'all just cut it. That's on you. You don't eat pork. Fine. No problem. But don't get mad because I do. Because I don't get mad that you don't. That's more for me. You see, if God said for them not to eat it, so be it. But this is why your life is not pleasing to God. This is why you struggle. This is why you get frustrated. Because God told you not to do something. And you automatically heard God say, tell everybody else not to do it. Oh. Come on. It got quiet. It got quiet. Because God instructed you to live a particular way. You're expecting everyone else to live the same way. So now you're not living a life pleasing to God because you're trying to throw something on them that was not required of them because God said for you to do that. So when you start realizing that if you realize that the life that you're living is personal, one-on-one between you and God, you live that life, you follow those instructions and those precepts that he has given to you to do, then your life isn't pleasing to God. But you want everybody else to live like you. So you got your children all bound up because, God told you not to do something, so they can't do it either. Well, God told me not to get on the internet, so we're taking the internet out the house. But mama, I got to do my homework. How am I supposed to do my homework? I don't know, but the Lord told me I can't be on the internet. So your children fail out of school because they can't get their assignments done because God told you not to be on the internet. Uh-oh. Y'all missed that. We put this on everyone else, so now our life is not... Because what God called us to do is not supposed to cause damage to someone else. Oh, man, there's a revelation right there. What God called you to do is not supposed to cause damage to someone else. It's supposed to be an enlightenment to them, a reflection for them, an example for them to live by. Not in a condemnation, a brutality. You know what? Listen, I understand you guys, how you live. I respect it. But think about this. The life I live is mine. If you don't live the way I live, let me see. Let me check my list. No, I don't care. Because my responsibility in the world is to live the life God designed for me to live. And my responsibility is to live this life so that it is pleasing to God. But if I come to you and say, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that, then what I'm doing is I'm trying to reflect what I'm doing onto you. In order for you to do what I'm doing, now you are becoming a mirror image of me instead of being a mirror image of God. The other problem is, I don't condemn you for how you live. So stop trying to condemn me with your opinions. Because when you become highly opinionated about everything that people are doing, you are no better than they are. But if God called you to be highly opinionated, then you keep being that. If God called you to speak on everything, you keep speaking. But here's the kicker. Don't complain when your keep speaking causes everyone else to be silent around you. Oh, man. Oh, man. I'm going to just leave that. I'm going to let that marinate out there. If we were having a Bible study, I'd deal with that then. But I'm not. So, see, watch this. Watch this, Kevin. Here's the thing. Remember, a life pleasing to God is intentional. You can't stumble into it. You can't fall into it. You can't happenstance into it. You have to make a decision and you have to make a choice. You have to decide to follow God and you have to choose this day who you shall serve. It is intentional. God's anointing doesn't protect you when you are foolish. God's assignment will lead you and protect you as Jeremiah, as he said in Jeremiah. But we got it wrong. I'm just trying to help y'all. Again, as we said, all that it takes. If it takes all that to live a life pleasing to God, then why don't we put more effort to living a life pleasing to God? We have to realize that our failures at living this life is based on some simple fact. Here's the fact. Y'all ready? You got you taking notes. I see that. Y'all ready? Watch this. We spend more time on the actions and words of those who despise us than living a life that they can't find anything to say about. Let me say it again. We spend more time on the actions and words of those who despise us than on living a life that they can't even find anything to speak about. For example, I'm quite certain that people who say that they don't focus on what people say about them are living their life concerned about what people would think about them. It kills me, Kevin, when they say, oh, I don't care what people say. Yes, you do. Because anyone on the outside watching you is watching that when certain people show up or certain people come around, you are different. Mm-hmm. You act different because you don't want them to see different. But yeah, you're not worried about, oh, I got to be careful. Sister Johnson in the house. We got to watch out because, Sister Johnson put everything out there. But if you don't care, you're going to live as you live. That's right. That's right. And if Sister Johnson put it out there, but yet your life is pleasing to God, they're going to come after Sister Johnson. How dare you talk about this? Y'all notice something? Watch this. Now I'm going back to last week. Watch this. Y'all ready? Hold you. Check this out. People was real critical about Joel Osteen. But there's 1,500 other churches in that community that nobody said anything about. And guess what? He got money being poured into his ministry to help him because of the words that the enemies were speaking against him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Only thing that these fools did was add it to his benefit. Mm-hmm. 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 He said, well, this is what happened. We could, and they proved that what he was saying was true. When it got to a point that you had people that was working there at the time that things was happening saying, we couldn't get out. We were stuck in the building for 4 days. No one said anything about that because they got one fool that sway up and down. They was able to get over there to the building. But at the end of the day, you got celebrities and well-known people saying, I am giving $250,000 to his project for him to help feed the people in Houston. Mm-hmm. And watch, people sitting there like, but wait. This is, no. See, had you not put him into the forefront, see the enemies was trying to tear him down. And some of them still are. Some of them who are in storefronts who don't even have churches. There are people in the era right now, they call themselves apostles. There's one of them, and I hope they watch it. They're talking about this person. Saying he's of the devil. He's not a man of God. He's a motivational speaker. But yet, he is able to reach more people right now than they ever could have. Their storefront might be flooded, but I guarantee you some of the money they may get to recover their flood might have came out of his pocket. I'm going to leave that alone. Because at the moment that we, on one scale, start speaking about someone on another scale, only thing we're doing is giving them free advertisement. And now people are like, oh, okay, so you're going to talk about somebody that I know personally is doing all they can. But because they have the biggest building and the haters decide they want to... See, that's the thing, man. You know, again, when you live a life pleasing to God, now moving to the second portion, what does it say? He makes his enemies to be at peace with him. Because at the very moment, watch this, at the very moment, he opened the doors, when he could, clean up everything, distribution center, you don't hear nothing from the haters. You don't hear nothing from the enemy. You don't hear nothing from them. One of the last thing they went, well, he finally doing something. So then what happens is you have people out there bringing up fake stuff, talking about, well, they checking tithing records for those coming in the door. I said, oh, y'all really trying. Because we know that ain't true. So because they did that, someone said, oh, okay, well, let me pay the tithes for everybody. Here's $250,000. See, every time, when you watch it, I need y'all to realize this. When you live a life pleasing to God, every time a hater tries to hate on you, it ends up being reversed on them and benefits you. That's why it says even your enemies are at peace with you. The reason they're at peace with you is because they realize if they keep coming at you, the only thing that's going to happen is they keep blessing you. So they become at peace with how you're living, and they shut up. The other thing is, even though they want to hate on you, because of the life that you're living, even though they can't stand you, they can't knock the fact that you're doing something good. Let me, true story. And I shared this often. I'm sharing it again today. When you think about, years ago, I had a certain leader who, because God moved us from them, they automatically assumed I was the enemy. And they tried to discredit and destroy us. I paid it no mind. What I do, I just kept doing what I was supposed to do. When my leader came to them, because they were vetting me, and they asked them, they said, I need you in one word to describe this person. They go into an enemy and say, in one word, I need you to describe this person. The enemy said, servant. At that very moment, it was reality. God said, because the life you're living is pleasing to me, they are at peace with who you are, and they can't try to stop you anymore. They had to acknowledge that you've been serving me. You have to realize that I didn't try to knock them down. I didn't try to talk about them. That's why I didn't bring their name up. But the reality is, when you understand that it's not about what people say about you, you just keep living. You keep walking. You keep functioning. You don't worry about what people say. You just keep living. Because as long as you keep trying to live based on people's opinions of you, then what happens is you are an opinion-based person, and that's an internet site. That's an app. You're not getting anything back from how many likes you get. But because people are so social media savvy and they're so handicapped by it, they want to be everything that is acceptable. Oh man, I need my video to go viral. I need 5 million followers. I need 50 million likes. Why? Because there's money in that. But when you live the life pleasing to God, he says, prosper, keep you safe, and provide you a hope and a future. None of that says money. Because my thing is, if I'm safe and I'm prospering, meaning I'm always got food on the table, my family is always eating, my bills are always paid, I'm prospering. He says a hope. That means that tomorrow is a joy. I can't wait to see what tomorrow's going to bring, and a future, which means that even where I'm living now is going to be better because God has more for me. Why am I worrying about how many likes I get on a web page? But none of this happens until you live a life pleasing to God. I've never, can I be transparent? I've never tried to be liked. I've never tried to fit in. I've never tried to just want everybody to be around me and be a circle. I just do me. The thing about doing me is I'm living the life God told me to live. And because I'm living that life, what it does is it causes people to gravitate towards me. And when they gravitate, I say, come on, I welcome them in. It's like you're the only one in the sandbox, but the sand in your box looks better than everybody else's. So like, hey, can I come play with you? Come on. And I don't take advantage of them. I'm happy they're there. I thank God for them. And if I have an opinion of them, good, bad, or indifferent, they'll never know. Why? Because it's not about me. It's about these are people being gravitating to me. And whatever I'm doing pleasing to God is because they're gravitating. It's nothing else than that. And all I can do is say, okay, they're at my table. So my question is this. I'm going to eat from their table. They're going to eat from mine. So they're bringing something that I needed, and I'm providing something that they're hungry for. But if you keep bringing people to a table that the legs are weak and the plates are empty, then everybody starves. Because you're trying to create meals that you saw everyone else likes, but you can't eat. Oh my gosh, I'm going to bring, come on, everybody, I'm going to learn how to make shrimps and grits. But yet you're allergic. So how do you know it tastes any good? See, the thing about, watch this, y'all ready? The thing is, when you're not living a life pleasing to God, it's because you're too busy providing a meal that even you can't consume. You keep feeding food, you keep feeding people with stuff that you can't even eat. You can't stand. You can't tolerate. But you want everybody else to do it. Why? It's not pleasing to God. God has not called us to lead people off a cliff. God has called us to lead them to a higher place. But until you start walking as an example, you miss it. In the last 6 months, God has brought more leadership, more wealth builders, more corporate, more CEOs around me than he has in the last 5 years. And in places that are not the boardroom. And I sit amongst them and I talk with them and I break bread with them and I hear from them and I'm sitting there watching them say, okay, how can I sow into you? How can I pour into you? How can I help you out? And all I ever did was walk in the room because the life that I was living is pleasing unto God. And all I had to do was walk in the room. I didn't have to put a sign on. I didn't have to flash a business card. I didn't have to give an advertisement. All I had to do was walk in the room. When you're living a life pleasing to God, all you got to do is walk in the room.
No.
People will start gravitating to you. I don't have to force feed. Listen, think about this. Every time I put a post out, I get people responding. I get inboxes. Oh my God, that's what I needed. I'm not out there trying to be liked. I'm just giving you what God gives me. And I just put it out there, boom. And when I'm not doing that, watch this. I get inboxes. Where you been? We haven't heard from. We need to hear something. You have something today. Can you give me something personal? Because people begin to realize that when you start living a life pleasing to God, you start inputting in mindset. You start giving the wisdom of Solomon. You start presenting to them something that they can feed off of. But when you're not living a life pleasing to God, you subject yourself to everything and anything. Just because you have some a modicum of success doesn't mean that you are successful. Oh, man, come on now. And that's why you have to realize. So the scripture is saying this. When a man lives a life pleasing unto God, even his enemies are at peace with him. That's what it says. But nothing in there says that you won't face any kind of pressure. Because even Paul writes to Timothy that evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. You will still face some kind of objection from those who are just not real. So this doesn't mean that you won't face any of it. It just means that the majority of it you won't. Because if you're living a life pleasing to God, those people have to sit back and be quiet. Here's the beautiful thing. I'm trying to finish up. Here's the beautiful thing. When you live a life pleasing to God, Shawnette, not only do the enemies are at peace, and the reason they're at peace is because they're actually endorsing what you're doing. They just won't tell you. So when they hear other people start talking about what you're doing, they'll fight them. Like, man, what you doing, man? But it's because you have to realize And here's something. A friend years ago, a leader, I watched him break down. I watched him fall apart. He fell apart because he said this. He said, "I just wanted to see the good in everybody, and I realized that I can't." I said, "Well, but you tried." He said, "But it's frustrating. It's exhausting, because when I speak of the good in every person, even though other people see the evil in them, they come against me." So I was sitting there like, right, and I started realizing that over the last few years, I've been just presenting the good in people, and then all I get back is just all this extensive negativity. It's like, okay, at some point, when will you see something good about that person? When will you see something good? Like Joel Osteen, they came down on him. So when the doors is open, he's providing food and everything. They're still sitting there saying, well, he could have done that 3 days ago. You won't. It's like some people are just, they won't get a break no matter what they do. They will not get a break. But here's the thing. It's not because they're not trying. It's because the people that won't give them a break refuse to see that there's any good in them. And the problem with that is, if you refuse to see any good in anyone else, then you can't expect anyone to see any good in you. It is reciprocal. Once you start being so harsh and negative, and here's the thing, I don't mean passing the buck like, well, I ain't in it no more. No. When you will refuse to see anything they do good, you will always stand in that position, and then people will never see anything in you good. Because what they're witnessing is you saying, yeah, well, whatever, they still this, that. Because you still got to find something negative about something they do good. Joel Osteen, again, I go back to Osteen. He opened his doors. They still try to find something negative. And I'm like, but wait a minute. He opened his doors. He's providing food. People are sowing money into his relief fund so he can provide for them. And you're still not satisfied. And until we start living differently. That's why I said God's life says living life pleasing to God. What he's saying is that when you see the good in someone and you acknowledge it, acknowledge it. If someone shows you something good about a person that you can't stand, acknowledge the good. But if you keep holding fast to the negatives and don't believe this and don't believe that, then you can't expect anyone to see you any different. So then you ask yourself, what are they saying about you? How are you living? Because the reason now that your enemies are at peace with your life, and watch this is twofold. The first reason is because you're doing everything that's pleasing to God. The other reason is because you're not. Sometimes people are at peace with you just because they're like, that's who you're going to be. You ain't going to change. So it's not even peace. It's tolerance. When you live a life pleasing to God, people are not tolerant of you. They're at peace with it, meaning they're supportive of what you're doing. There is a difference. Stop being the one that they tolerate and start being the one that they are at peace with. Everybody standing on your feet.